Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachot, page 16b, with the words Amar Mar, top of the page, just about, first few words in. Amar Mar, Rabbi Meir Omer, Pigul, V'chayv Koris. The Gemara returns to the discussion of the Braita itself. The master said above, if the priest had intent of pigul, whether in the first set of presentations, whether in the second set, or whether in the third set, Rabbi Meir says the offering is pigul and one is liable to receive karet for its consumption, despite the fact that he performed the rest of the rite silently. The Gemara asks, now consider, one is not liable to receive karet unless all the permitting factors of the offering have been sacrificed. Meaning, if the whole service is completed, including the presentation of the blood. The Gemara provides a source for this claim. As the master said that the verse states with regard to pigul, it shall not be accepted. Leviticus 7 verse 18. Which indicates that the acceptance of a disqualified offering is like the acceptance of a valid offering, of which the verse states it shall be accepted. Leviticus 22:27. And just as there is no acceptance of a valid offering unless all its permitting factors have been sacrificed, so too, there is no lack of acceptance of a disqualified offering, meaning it is not rendered pigul unless all its permitting factors have been sacrificed. That is to say, in the absence of one of its permitting factors, it does not become pigul. V'hai kevan chashiv be'pifnim Pasleki made behechal maya bialmahu dikamade. Accordingly, the Gemara challenges, and with regard to this case of the blood of the bull and goat brought on Yom Kippur, since he had intent of pigul with regard to it when he was presenting the blood inside the Holy of Holies, he has disqualified it. If so, when he sprinkles the blood again later in the sanctuary on the curtain and the inner altar, it is as though he is merely sprinkling water and not the blood of the offering. Consequently, the permitting factors of the offering have not been sacrificed, and therefore the offering should not be rendered pigul. Rabbah said you find it possible in a case where there were 4 bulls and 4 goats. Meaning in a case where after the high priest presented the blood inside the Holy of Holies with pigul intent, the remaining blood spilled. Consequently, he was required to bring another bull and goat in order to present their blood on the curtain separating the sanctuary and Holy of Holies. During that presentation, he had intent of pigul, after which the remaining blood spilled, requiring him to bring another bull and goat in order to present their blood on the corners of the golden altar. He again had intent of pigul during that presentation, and then the blood spilled, which meant he had to bring yet another bull and goat in order to present their blood upon the golden altar itself. Rava said, you may even say that the Braita is referring to a case of only one bull and one goat, and the remaining blood was in fact disqualified. Nevertheless, with regard to rendering and offering pigul, the presentations performed with the disqualified blood affect acceptance as though the entire permitting factor was performed in its proper manner. In other words, even though the high priest sprinkled the blood inside the Holy of Holies with improper intent and thereby disqualified the offering, nevertheless, since he completed the service, he is considered as having sacrificed all the permitting factors with regard to pigul. Arba'in v'shalosh ve'atanya arba'in v'sheva lo kasha. The Braita mentioned there are 43 presentations of the blood of the bull and the goat sacrificed on Yom Kippur. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught otherwise in different Braita, which says that there are 47 presentations of that blood? Our answer is this is not difficult. This statement, that there are 43 presentations, is in accordance with the opinion that the one who says the high priest mixes the blood of the bull and the goat before placing it on the corners of the inner altar, rather than placing the blood of each one separately. And that statement, that there are 47 presentations, is in accordance with the opinion that the one who says that the high priest does not mix the two types of blood before placing them on the corners, but sprinkles 4 times from the blood of the bull and another 4 times from the blood of the goat, and only afterward mixes the blood of the 2 animals for placement on top of the altar. The Gemara raises another difficulty, but isn't it taught yet in another Braita that there are 48 presentations? The Gemara answers this is not difficult. This statement, that there are 48 presentations, is according to the opinion of the one who says that the pouring of the remainder of the blood on the base of the external altar is indispensable, and therefore this act is added to the total. That statement, that there are only 47 presentations, is in accordance with the opinion of the one who says that the pouring of the remainder of the blood is not indispensable. Okay? The Mishnah teaches if one intended people during the sacrifice of only part of the remaining factors, for example, during the burning of the handful, but not during the burning of the frankincense, the rabbis rule that the offering is not pigul. Concerning this, a dilemma was raised before the sages. If one had intended pigul during the conveying of the handful to the altar, but not during the conveying of the frankincense, what is the halacha? Rabbi Yochanan says the halacha with regard to conveying the handful is like that of removing the handful, just as intent of pigul with regard to removing only the handful renders the offering pigul, as it is the sole permitting factor with which the rite of removal is performed. The same applies to conveying the handful. And Rish Lakish says, the conveying of the handful is like its burning, just as intent of pigul is required during the burning of both the handful and the frankincense for the offering to be rendered pigul, as both of them are burned on the altar. The same halacha applies to conveying. The Gemara asks, granted one can understand the ruling of Reish Lakish as the conveying of a handful is only part of the permitting factors, since there is also the conveying of the frankincense. But as for the ruling of Rabbi Yochanan, what is the reason that intent of pigul during the conveying of only the handful renders the offering pigul? After all, he has not had intent of pigul during the conveying of all the permitting factors. Amarava kasav Rabbi Yochanan kol avodah she'eino teres avodah chashuva hi lepagel b'fnei atzma. Rava said, Rabbi Yochanan holds that if one performed any sacrificial rite that does not permit the offering, for example, conveying, even if he performed it with only one of the permitting factors, such as with the handful and not with the frankincense, it is considered a significant rite with regard to rendering the offering pigul on account of it by itself. It is not comparable to a case of intent of pigul during the sacrifice of only part of the permitting factors, as this rite of conveying does not render the offering permitted. Abai said to Rava, but what about the slaughter of one of the lambs brought with the 2 loaves on Shavuot, which is a rite that does not permit the offering, as neither the sacrifice of its portions designated for burning upon the altar, nor the consumption of the meat of the offering and the 2 loaves is permitted by this slaughter, and yet the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Meir in this case. Itnan shachadecha min hakevasim lechol shtei chalois lemachol hiktir echad min habazichin lechol shnei sedarim lemachol. Rabbi Meir omer pigul v'chayavin olav kores v'chachayim omen ein boy kores ad shipagel b'chol hamatir. As we learned in the Mishnah, if one slaughtered one of the 2 lambs with the intent to partake of the 2 loaves next day, or if one burned one of the bowls of frankincense with the intent to partake of the 2 arrangements of the Shomer the next day, Rabbi Meir says the meal offering is pigul and one is liable to receive karet for its consumption. And the rabbis say there is no liability to receive karet unless he had intent to pigul during the sacrifice of the entire permitting factor. Although the slaughter of one of the lambs is a rite that does not render an offering permitted, nevertheless, the rabbis maintain that it is not considered a significant rite with regard to rendering the offering pigul by itself. Amar le misavet lachem etanu kodosh shchitas kevosim mikadshele ve'aba lekadesh keva le'atil dabi. Rabbi said to Abai, do you maintain that the 2 loaves of bread are already sanctified from when they are in the oven and require only the sprinkling of the blood to render them permitted for consumption? In fact, the slaughter of the lambs sanctifies the loaves, and an act that comes to sanctify is considered like that which comes to permit. Since the slaughter of the 2 lambs sanctifies the loaves, the slaughter of each lamb is considered half a permitting factor. The slaughter of each lamb independently cannot render the loaves pigul. Rav Shimi Bashi asked a question. Rav Shimi Ashi raises an objection from a Braita that discusses the slaughter of the Paschal offering. The first Tana rules that if one slaughtering the Paschal offering intended for it to be consumed by both disqualified individuals, for example, uncircumcised males, and fit individuals, meaning mixture between these 2. For example, circumcised males, the offering is not disqualified. Cherem say, in a case where one slaughtered a paschal offering and severed one of the 2 organs of ritual slaughter with a disqualifying intention, and severing the other organ with a valid intention, then if one's intent with regard to circumcised males preceded the intent with regard to the uncircumcised males, the offering is valid. But if the intent with regard to the uncircumcised males preceded the intent with regard to circumcised males, it is disqualified. Yekaimulan, Yechasima Timplegi, Amar Levisav, Dam Mitzavo, Behem Kadosh, Dam Sakin Mikal Shele, Evada Kadish, Kevada Hatil Dam. Rav Shimi Barashi continues. Okay. Rav Shimi Barashi continues, and we maintain that the first Tana and Acherim disagree with regard to whether the sacrifice on half a permitting factor with disqualifying intent disqualifies the entire offering. In this case, although this slaughter does not sanctify anything, the severing of one of the organs is considered half a permitting factor. Rava said to Rav Shimi Barashi, do you maintain that the blood is already sanctified while the inside the neck of the animal? In fact, the knife sanctifies the blood, and that which comes to sanctify is considered like that which comes to permit. Consequently, the slaughter of the animal is a permitting factor, and the severing of one of its organs is half a permitting factor. Tashima b'medvamamui. Vital. Where were we? Rav Shimi Barashi continues, and we maintained that the first time of Acherim consequently the slaughter of the animal is permitting. Probably did that, but just to make sure I'll do that again. Okay? Rav Shimi Barashi, go from B'kaimalon. I probably did this, but I'll say it. Rav Shimi Barashi continues, and we maintain that the first Tana and Acherim disagree with regard to whether the sacrifice of half a permitting factor with disqualifying intent disqualifies the entire offering. And in this case, although the slaughter doesn't sanctify anything and severing one of the organs is considered half a permitting factor, Rava said to Rav Shimi Barashi, do you maintain that the blood is already sanctified while inside the neck of the animal? In fact, the knife sanctifies the blood, and that which comes to sanctify is considered like that which comes to permit. Consequently, the slaughter of the animal is a permitting factor, and the severing of one of its organs is half a permitting factor. Tashima, b'med devoim b'chamitza v'matan kli uvehiluch. The Gemara suggests coming here a proof from a Braita. In what case is this statement? That intent of pigul with regard to only the handful renders the meal offering pigul said. It is said in case where one had such intent during the removal of the handful or during the placement of the handful in a service vessel or during the conveying. My love, he looked at he looked matan kli. The Gemara clarifies the proof. What, is it not correct to say that the Braita is referring to the conveying of a handful for burning upon the altar? In which case it is teaching that intent of pigul with regard to the handful during its conveying renders the offering pigul. The Gemara responds, no, the Braita is referring to the conveying of the handful before its placement into the service vessel that sanctifies it. Since the frankincense is not placed into a vessel, in this case, the conveying of the handful alone is considered the performance of the entire rite. Second. The Gemara asks, so why does the Braita stay during the placement of the handful of the vessel and during the conveying? This indicates that it is referring to an act of conveying that occurs after the placement. It should have stated during the conveying or during the placement of the handful in the vessel. The Gemara responds, this is not difficult, as one should amend the Braita and teach it in that order, meaning with the conveying before the placement. Baloi le'aktora, baloi le'locha mimoile, honegashia kevin le'locha tzorech, de'aktora kare le'aktora. The Gemara raises another objection from the next clause of the same braita. Once he comes to perform the burning of the handful, there is no liability to receive karet unless he has intent of pigul during the sacrifice of the frankincense as well. The Gemara asks, according to Reish Lakish, the Braita should have stated once he comes to perform the conveying and to perform the burning. Reish Lakish maintains that the conveying mentioned previously in the Braita occurs earlier, before its placement into a service vessel, which means that there is another act of conveying. The Gemara responds, this is not difficult, since this conveying is for the purpose of burning. It is called burning in the Braita. The Gemara further challenges, but the Braita also states if he placed the handful on the altar in silence, and he placed the frankincense with intent of pigul, according to Reish Lakish, he should have also stated, if he carried the handful in silence and the frankincense with intent of pigul, as according to Reish Lakish, it is the act of conveying that he is performing at this stage. The Gemara responds, indeed, this is a difficulty. Hiktir shum shum lechol shum shum. Hiktir shum shum lechol shum shum. עד שכל הקיימת כולה רבחית ורבנון ורששת חד אמר פיגול וחד אמר פסול וחד אמר כשר. The Gemara continues its discussion of pigul intent that occurred during the sacrifice of part of a permitting factor. If one burned an amount the size of a sesame seed of the handful and frankincense with the intent to consume an amount the size of a sesame seed from the remainder of the next day, and he repeated the same action with accompanying intent until he burned the entire measure of the handful and frankincense, the halacha in this case is a matter of dispute between Rav Chizda, Rav Hamnuna, and Rav Sheshet. One says that the entire meal offering is pigul, and one says that the offering is disqualified but is not pigul, and one says that the offering remains fit. Lema mandi amar pigul k'Rabbi Meir, mandi amar pasul k'Rabbanan, mandi amar kasher k'Rabbi. The Gemara suggests, let us say, that the one who says that the meal offering is pigul holds, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who says that one renders an offering pigul on account of pigul intent during the sacrifice of even part of its permitting factors, and the one who says that the offering is disqualified holds in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, who say that such intent disqualifies an offering but does not render it pigul. And finally, the one who says that the offering is fit holds in accordance with the opinion of the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who says on 14a that if one slaughters each of the two lambs brought on Shavuot with the two loaves, each time intending to consume half an olive bulk from a different loaf of the next day, the offering is fit, as the halves do not combine to render the offering pigul. Mimai dilmat kanu kamar Meir Hasan ela dechishe v'shiuro aval hochad dechishe v'shiuro. The Gemara rejects the suggestion. From where is this conclusion drawn? Perhaps our Meir states that one renders an offering pigul on account of pigul intent during the sacrifice part of the permitting factors only there, where he had intent with regard to its entire measure. But here, where he did not have intent with regard to its entire measure, but instead had a series of intentions with regard to a measure equivalent to a sesame seed, it is possible that Rabbi Meir does not render the offering pigul. Yad kan like Kamri Avanana Samela Dilo Chashi Be Bikulimatim Avanaka Chashi Be Bikulimatim Avanami Dipagir. And furthermore, perhaps the rabbis state that one does not render an offering pigul unless he has pigul intent during the sacrifice of the entire permitting factor only there, But where he did not have intent concerning it during the entire permitting factor, but only during the burning of the handful. But here, where he had intent during the entire permitting factor, meaning during the burning of both the handful and the frankincense, he has indeed rendered the offering pigul, despite the fact that each intention referred only to a small portion of the entire measure. V'ad kan loka amar Rabbi Hasam era de lo hadir minayim yois avoida era hachad hadir minayim yois avoida hachanamid bazil. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi states that the offering is valid if one had intent of pigul with regard to half an olive bullock from each loaf only there, where he did not subsequently complete his intention with regard to a full measure from the same sacrificial rite, as he had pigul intent with regard to half an olive bullock during the slaughter of each lamb independently. But here, where he subsequently completed his intention with regard to a full measure from the same rite, perhaps he has indeed disqualified the offering. Rather, the one who says that an offering is pigul, when one repeatedly burns an amount the size of a sesame seed from the handful and frankincense with the intent to consume an amount the size of a sesame seed from the remainder of the next day, would claim that all the Tanaim agree that it is pigul. Similarly, the one who says that it is disqualified would contend that all agree that it is disqualified, and that the one who says that it is fit would maintain that all agree that it is fit. Man yamar pigul divrei kol kesavar derech achila bekach b'derech achila bekach man yamar pasul divrei kol kesavar ein derech achila bekach ein derech achila bekach v'havia la kemincha shelo huktara uman yamar kasher divrei kol kesavar derech achila bekach ein derech achila bekach. The Gemara elaborates, the one who says that all agree, and as people maintains that the manner of its consumption is in such a manner, meaning in small portions, and likewise the manner of its burning is also in such a manner. And the one who says that all agree, it is disqualified, holds that the manner of its consumption is not in such a manner. Accordingly, this type of pigul intent does not render the offering pigul, and the manner of its burning is also not in such a manner, and consequently it is like a meal offering whose handful was not burnt properly, and is therefore disqualified. And finally, the one who says that all agree it is fit, holds that the manner of its burning is in such a manner, and therefore the burning was performed properly, but the manner of its consumption is not in such a manner, which means that the pigul intent is inconsequential.